Coming to you from a cozy little condo high atop Old Fourth Ward, Atlanta. Welcome to The Ron Show on America One Radio. Here's your host, Ron Roberts.
And I'm joined immediately by my friend Donnell Suggs, editor-in-chief at the Atlanta Voice. Go on, let's get this out of the way.
Okay, the Mets are a half game over the Braves. We literally tanked the whole first half of the season. You guys still didn't do anything with that. So I'm feeling really good this morning. I had to get that off my chest.
Okay. Now, what have we learned about celebrating the standings in the middle of the season?
We learned that it's not usually a good thing, but when you're a Mets fan, you have to take your moments when you can. You just have to.
Man,
they're very few and far between.
I'm not gonna lie. I can't even be mystified at the way the Braves are playing. If I'm being honest, I'm a little blown away at like some of the pitching. Like Charlie Morton has been a huge, to me, disappointment. And every time they call on Bryce Elder, they pull him up from AAA to start, and I'm like, well, here we go.
Right back down.
I know what's going to come of this. I don't know how that guy fell off a cliff, but he has fallen off a cliff. They need to go get John Smoltz, old psychologist. Remember, they used to pull John Smoltz.
He did have somebody he sat with.
Yeah, he had like a sports psychologist or something like that. They need to get him because Bryce Elder, he ain't it. He ain't it. I mean, he didn't pass the eyeball test, but anyway. Sorry.
Don't expect me to cry for you, by the way.
No, I know. And it is what it is, right? So obviously, folks don't tune into this show to hear us talk about sports, but
unfortunately, they don't.
I know, right? Because I could do it. I've been toying actually with this idea of doing a sports podcast that is focused solely on what I call the brave bird dogs. The Braves, the Falcons, the Hawks, the Georgia Bulldogs. I could do that. I could totally do that. I've got a Facebook page and everything for it. But anyway,
I'm so ready for you. I'm ready for you when you get there. Let's get back to business. But call me when you're ready to go.
yeah. Let's do that. Let's talk business here. I wanted to catch up with you because it's been now nearly 3 weeks. I believe 18 days since President Joe Biden said he was going to step aside in the campaign, and the presumptive nominee was Kamala Harris. She now has the delegate votes before the convention, so the convention will just be a celebration, probably not only of her receiving the nomination and the nation's second introduction to Tim Walz, but also I hope and pray and believe this will be an opportunity for the Democratic Party to really celebrate the career of Joe Biden. But I wanted to call you because we haven't talked since then. What is the sense amongst your readers at the Atlanta Voice at this? I mean, this is a breathtaking pivot and change of direction, trajectory, momentum. How are folks feeling?
For anyone that hasn't heard me on your show, the Atlanta Voice is a black newspaper, black-owned, black-operated, 59 years. Mm-hmm. That being said, my readership is of a certain ilk, if you will, Democratic mostly. Matter of fact, Democratic only almost. And they're really exuberant about this. When I go to the rallies and stuff, and I have on my logo polo, whatever, people come over and say, oh, my God, isn't this wonderful? And we this and we that. And it wasn't that before. It was more or less like, we just can't have Trump in. Now it's like, oh, we want her in. Before it was like, we just can't have Trump. So the energy has totally changed. I think there was engagement. I don't want to lie, like people didn't care. They cared, but it was like party. Now it's party and candidates. And that's reminiscent of 08 and 012, if you don't mind me saying. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I went to the rally myself at the Georgia State University Convocation Center. First time I've been in that building, by the way. I've been meaning to go check out a Georgia State game, but just haven't. That's a fantastic venue for that school.
It's a beautiful venue. It will not be as packed as that for a Georgia State game. This
okay, so there is that. Yes. but you're right. I came away with this sense that there was a 2008 vibe, a very very much a 2008 vibe from the Obama ascendancy, and it's happening so fast too. It's kind of breathtaking, right? I mean,
it really is. Though.
I'm just curious, just from a reporting standpoint, this has to be kind of exhausting, right? Because it's happening so fast and in such a tight window.
Let me give you this. I was in Milwaukee for the RNC,
right?
And it was Biden Harris. Flash forward, and we're in a rally in Atlanta, and it's Harris alone. Flash forward again, I'll be in Chicago next week on the 19th for Harris Walz. This is only a month's time from when I was in Milwaukee. So the gears have shifted left and right, but the energy. Oh, Unbelievable. Obviously, it was the RNC, but still we had Democratic, situations there. And the energy is so different. It was almost like playing defense then, and now you're on offense. Totally different.
Yeah, you're right, and hopefully that's something we'll see the Atlanta Falcons do this fall, playing a little more offense. Anyway, see, I could talk sports again. So there was a gathering of
sports, by the way.
Well, yeah, you're not even a Falcons fan either.
No,
but
not at all.
Listen, no one's perfect. But you were at a Harris Walls surrogate presser yesterday in front of the John Lewis mural. Representative Sarah Draper was there. Harold Jones, North Fulton County Democrat Chair Dante Carter, who I believe he has run for Sandy Springs mayor, is running for that.
He did, and lost.
And Kevin Olasonye. Am I saying that name right?
You are.
So what was the message from them yesterday?
Overall, what I took away from that was this. Yes, the rallies are packed. Yes, the energy is up. But you cannot rest on your laurels. Olasonye said that multiple times. Then we had questions and answers. And I asked him the same thing. Is this energy, do you feel it in the Democratic Party of Georgia, despite what the election board is trying to do? He said, yes, but we really can't ignore that. We really can't say, oh, we got this in the bag.
Right.
We still have to get to the polls. Earlier, the better. And don't stop this energy. Keep on going to the rallies. Keep on wearing the T-shirts and waving the signs. But if you don't take this energy into the ballot, rather into the election booth, then what is it for? And I was like, I get that. I get it.
Yeah, no, it's a message that I think needs to resonate with folks who, again, we see the polling changing. We see the closing of the ranks within the Democratic Party. But I was telling my friend Daryl this the other day. He's just it seems like he's wired for pessimism. Anyway. I was telling Daryl this the other day, I'm like, we can't just win this race. We have to overwhelm this race because of exactly the thing you're talking about, what the Georgia Election Board here has been doing, giving folks at the county level the opportunity to foot drag, which I just find is ironic because it was Donald Trump complaining about how slow the results were coming in or how much they changed overnight because of how slow the results are being tabulated. And now they're literally trying to gum up the works even more, I guess, to just give him something more to complain about, but also to slow up the process. Listen, I had a guest on yesterday, Marilyn Marks from the Coalition for Good Governance, and we went at length going over how Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger has, since being in office, really messed this all up. But that's another topic for another day. We've got the Fulton recount. What is this, the fourth one, I believe?
Yes, sir.
Going in, and I know that there's a lot of skepticism on the left, but again, I'm of the mind, like, no, let's do this. Like, pull up all the shades, turn on all the lights. Let's get all the sunshine on this. Even if somehow the numbers change in such a way that Trump winds up getting the electoral votes of Georgia, the 2020 results still don't change because he needed more than what Georgia offered to close the gap. But
exactly.
But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about the momentum shift. With Kamala Harris now atop the ticket. What's the reaction to Tim Walz being her vice presidential selection? It was presumed that she was going to have to pick a white man all along.
No question about it. Which
I ask a lot on the right. Does that make him a DEI hire?
Exactly. I just asked someone that. DEI.
But how is he being received within the African American community?
He's being received well. A lot of people just like the shine that Shapiro has, that young energy, that tough guy, that Philly tough guy. And it was like, oh, this will be great. He'll be the one that'll like throw punches, and she'll be the one that'll kind of like referee. And it was like, no, you don't want to get into the whole Jewish thing, what's going on in Gaza or whatever. Let's leave that alone. I think that's the route they took.
Yeah.
And let's get this dad, this almost grandpa-like guy. He's only 61 years old.
I know, right? Let's pump the brakes. I'm only 50 here.
Exactly. I'm 46. He's not old at all.
Right.
He's not.
No.
He's a young man with a young family. His kids are in high school.
He rode the slingshot at the Minnesota Fair with his teenage daughter. Exactly. I wouldn't recommend that to folks older than him.
Exactly. I wouldn't recommend that to folks my age.
Right.
26. What are you doing on that thing? He's great. And I think what I'm hearing from readers and emails and then conversations is that he's an everyman. He's an everyman. No, he's not black, but he's an everyman. No, he's not young, youngish, whatever. He's an everyman. He's the guy you know. He's the high school teacher you had. He's the high school football coach you even know or covered or your son played for. And that is relatable. He's super relatable. J.D. Vance, just to bring him up, is not relatable. Unless you were like in a frat at the University of Georgia or you worked in like finance or something. And you know this annoying guy in your office. He's not really relatable. And I think Tim Walz is relatable. I met him in Milwaukee. Again, the Democrats had press conferences every morning, every day after the RNC. And he was great on day 3. He was great. He was like, these guys are weird. I was like, yeah, weird. It's good. I get it.
I was going to ask you,
like,
did that stand out to you then? Did it cross your mind that you might be listening to the potential vice presidential nominee at all?
Not at all. Not at all. But I said, she's got to get this guy in her cabinet if she wins. He's got this everyday guy. He should be I said he should be over education. He's a teacher. I totally put a pin in it and kept some of the photos I took from that press conference and some of the quotes and put a pin in it. I said, this is the kind of guy you want on your cabinet. An American educator / former military, regardless of what they say about what he did before he left after 24 years. Former military educator, everyday dad, who's probably like, helping cut his neighbor's lawn. I liked him. I was like, okay, good. Keep an eye on him. But no, I was a total Roy Cooper guy.
Oh yeah, you were. See, I looked at Roy Cooper and I thought a little too old for me. I don't need another such situation like Obama or Biden was.
Right, and that's what it would have been. By the time I'm done with these 8 years, now I'm trying to run, and I'm 70 something. So yeah, that would have been that for sure. He loves being the governor of North Carolina. Is what he says. I don't blame him. It's a great state.
Well, and Democrats need North Carolina to continue to bluify. I say, and I think a guy like Roy Cooper can kind of get. He's kind of uniquely positioned to do that in North Carolina.
He really is.
A lot of the same ways that John Bel Edwards, when he was governor of Louisiana, didn't exactly put up much of a fight with abortion rights there. But in the state of Louisiana, if you want to stay in office, sometimes you're going to have to capitulate on some issues that aren't going to favor well within your party. Anyway, we're with Donnell Suggs, editor-in-chief at the Atlanta Voice. You had an exclusive one-on-one sit-down with Senator Jon Ossoff, and I want to dive into that if we'll give us just a quick break here to catch our breath. This is The Ron Show on America One Radio. Follow The Ron Show on your preferred social media platform. That would be at Ron Show ATL, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, X, Threads. Donnell Suggs at the Atlanta Voice. Where can they follow the Atlanta Voice on their preferred social media platform, sir? The
same way we can follow The Ron Show on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at theatlantavoice.com. That's the THE AtlantaVoice.com. And you can follow me on Twitter as well at Suggs, SUGGS, Writer, WRITER.
Yeah,
please do.
But they're going to get all that Mets gloating on there, and I don't know if
you're going to get that.
Subject anybody to that riffraff this early in the day.
In a couple of weeks, you get the Jet stuff too. So just like pace yourself.
Oh man, how do you feel about your Jets this season? Be honest.
I'm optimistic, but I can't get excited, dude. The guy hasn't really played all year. He hasn't played for over a year. He has not played in a real game.
Yeah.
So Aaron Rodgers, I'm excited. I was excited when we signed him. Now I'm more or less like just hopeful we can get him on the field for 4 quarters in a real NFL game, not a preseason game. He's not expected to play, which why would he? So I'm hoping that we can just get him on the field.
It's really interesting to note too that the Falcons and the Jets are kind of in a similar situation. They've got a quarterback that they're excited about, a veteran quarterback they're excited about, who hasn't really played for their team yet, and is coming off a pretty debilitating injury and starting fresh. I think the difference between the Jets and the Falcons is you guys have a defense. I don't know that the Falcons will.
You got Jesse Bates. Yeah, Jesse Bates III, who is I thought was one of the best players in the NFL last year.
It's him and it's Grady and I know AJ Terrell and a bunch of who?
AJ Terrell's living up a reputation of being a very good college player.
Yeah,
and an exciting young player. But we keep on saying the same thing now. Year 4, we got to kind of see him dominate that side of the ball. Otherwise, he's just a corner.
It also helps if you have a pass rush. I think cornerbacks are better when there's a pass rush to make quarterbacks make mistakes. But anyway, folks, don't come here to talk sports or listen to me talk sports.
Apparently they do.
But I can do it. I can so do it. I'm telling you. Anyway, we're with Donnell Suggs at the Atlanta Voice. You had an exclusive one-on-one sit-down with Senator Jon Ossoff that I wanted to give folks the opportunity to check out. We'll put that in the show notes at ronshowatl.com.
Thank you.
What are some of the first of all, what are his thoughts initially on the the change of the game now from Biden Harris to Harris Walz?
I asked him that towards the end of our interview, and I used that in a separate story. He was excited about that. He knows Tim Walz from just perusing Washington and whatnot. They're not friends, but he was excited about the pick. He thought he again was an everyman that spoke to Americans that just want to make a better life for themselves. And what he did with the school lunch program in Minnesota, everyone's highlighting that. But it is a big deal because at one point, kids were paying for lunch. And it's like, come on, man. It's like you got to feed children. Mm-hmm. And he went and did that and made that happen. It was very expensive for the state, yes. But he found, the budget for it. And that was ballsy and that was big time. And he's going to go down in Minnesota history for that. They're going to put that on his gravestone, God rest. I hope he lives for another 100 years. But they're going to put that on his gravestone. Somebody that really stepped up for their kids. So also was excited about that. He really was.
So he actually came to the Atlanta Voice office to have this sit down with you guys. And what were some of the things that you discussed with him?
Well, with all due respect, I demand, that was in my demands. If you want to come and talk to us, I would love to have him come into the office and see it. And he was great. He was like a tourist looking around at the old, framed newspapers we have from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s and early 2000s.
Yeah.
And meeting the staff. I want to sit down with him and talk about programs and legislation that he's getting passed that helps Black families in particular. Not that it should be for every family, but in particular for my readership, I like to put things with names or faces with names so people can understand who's fighting for them. And he was so good about explaining these things and talking about that stuff. Mm-hmm. Really good. Really good.
You guys went into talking about the gap between Black and white women when it comes to, being pregnant and maternal health. And what update does he have for you on issue or legislation that, he has championed to try and combat that?
He knows, just like anyone that with any kind of education in this particular form, you just can't get hospitals built. That's not how it works. Hey, build a hospital there. Mm-hmm. Build a hospital there. But what you can do is find legislation and find some money to get clinics. If you can get the clinics in places like, I'm just throwing some cities around that we talked about. Albany, for example. Mm-hmm. Not a tiny little city, mm-hmm. but if you've been there, pretty far out there. And they don't have any major hospitals that close anymore. But he's trying to get clinics in these places. Even in Atlanta. There's some neighborhoods in Atlanta I can take you to. You're like, where are we? I'm like, we're in the Southwest. Oh, I didn't even know. Like, it's like, oh, okay. And it's getting clinics there. He just wants people to have access to health care. And we don't have universal health care in this country. And we don't have universal Medicaid in the state. Great. But if I can get to the clinic, maybe I can find out what's wrong with my kid's nose. He's always blowing his nose. Or this fever won't go down. People need to know that they can do that. Moms especially, because moms seem to handle a lot of that stuff. So he wants that to be something that he's going to put on his it's on it's the top of his list, and he's getting that done in a lot of places. It's really cool.
This just highlights to me how important it is to keep focusing on the down ballot ticket as well, because and obviously we don't have a Senate seat up for grabs here in the state of Georgia this year, but other states do, and so those who are politically motivated need to look around the electoral map and pick a state or states, and maybe throw some donations to the young fellow running for Senate out in Texas, for example. I mean, I would love to see Ted Cruz get off, and I think that is a fantastic candidate running against him. You also asked about the Federal Prison Oversight Act, something that he has been very, very vocal about. You want to go into that a little bit?
I do. We broke the story about that last week when we got a source to let us know that it's been, not that it's been signed, that it was going to be signed by Joe Biden. Mm-hmm. Also and it's well documented, he took a bunch of tours for obviously prisons all over Georgia and in particular in Atlanta, the one downtown, and was like, wait a minute, man, these conditions, I get it. It's prison. These people they didn't like do something great to be here, but come on, these are human beings too. And that Oversight Act is big because that's going to have a board physically going to these places and making sure that these checklists are checked off. And that's a big deal because, again, we forget about folks sometimes. Oh, they're in prison, the hell with them. And that's not right. That's not right. You're still a certain level of living conditions you should have, that you should have. And he was really big on that, pushed it and got it on the desk of Joe Biden and got signed, which is great because, again, Joe Biden's going to sign a whole bunch of stuff these next, 120 days or 160 days, whatever we have left in the year. So we can get a lot of things pushed past before we change regimes. And John also wanted that to happen, not knowing that Joe Biden wouldn't be the president again, just knowing that this needed to be done in Georgia, and they got it. That's great.
Yeah. I've always found it curious that the American prison system, for all of its warts, the biggest one for me was I call it the Joe Arpaioization of the prison system.
My gosh.
Like, I mean, I get it. It's not supposed to be Club Med. It's not supposed to be a 5-star resort, but it does need to at least be humane. It needs to, I mean, things like air conditioning, things that we take for granted that should exist in the prison. Like, we shouldn't be sending people to rehabilitate in prison and then not give them the means to be able to rehabilitate themselves, for example. But
we would have major problems if I showed you shelters for animals.
Right.
And they were treated the same way. We would have major issues with that.
Yeah, you're not going to come away with a healthy, happy pet when they come from an unair conditioned, inhospitable facility. You're right. Donald Trump gave a little bit of a Q&A presser yesterday. I want to get your thoughts on that in just a second. The Ron Show continues in just a few. On the America One Radio app, AmericaOneRadio.com, on demand at ProgressiveVoices.com, or wherever you podcast.
Broadcasting 5 days a week to make common sense common again. This is The Ron Show on America One Radio.
Yesterday, Donald Trump gave a press conference, and we're with Donnell Suggs, editor-in-chief at the Atlanta Voice. Not unlike that Q&A he gave at the NABJ, the one yesterday was absolutely batshit crazy. This yesterday from him he's back to comparing crowd sizes. Let's listen to this real quick, Donnell.
The biggest crowd I've ever spoken to, and you've seen, Maggie, I was at the mall. I was at the Washington Monument. I was at the whole thing. I had crowds. I don't know who's ever had a bigger crowd than I have, but I had it many times. The biggest crowd I've ever spoken before was that day. And I'll tell you, it's very hard to find a picture of that crowd. You see the picture of a small number of people relatively going to the Capitol, but you never see the picture of the crowd. The biggest crowd I've ever spoken. I've spoken to the biggest crowds. Nobody's spoken to crowds bigger than me.
Nobody.
If you look at Martin Luther King, when he did his speech, his great speech, and you look at same real estate, same everything, same number of people, if not, we had more. And they said he had 1 million people, but I had 25,000 people. But when you look at the exact same picture, and everything's the same, because it was the fountains, the whole thing, all the way back to from Lincoln to Washington, and you look at it, and you look at the picture of his crowd, my crowd, we actually had more people.
More people than MLK's March on Washington. That's news to me, and I think that's news to just about everybody else. But it's the pictures. It's the cropping of the pictures, obviously, Donnell.
Absolutely.
Well, first, let's go to the Q&A, the sit-down he had at the National Association of Black Journalists. You were there. We all see what happened on the stage, and there's no need to revisit that. But, I mean, come on. What was the reaction on the floor?
I mean, what is going on here? Like, why is anyone taking this man seriously? Prior to this, but after this, it was just unbelievable. A lot of the young people in NABJ who don't cover Trump,
right,
who don't have the luxury of covering a president, and they were online to see this phenomenon or whatever. Mm-hmm. And there was a lot of people like me who have covered him year after year that aren't amazing, that would not be surprised by anything he does or says. But the room got so silent 30 seconds in when the guy gets disrespectful and whatnot. And I'm telling people, what do you expect? What were they expecting? It was embarrassing for me to be a veteran and watch the NABJ invite this clown and then get like upset about how things turned out. It was unbelievable.
I couldn't help but just cringe every time he'd complain about the
sound system.
Yeah, the delay and the sound system. It just sounds like an old man who can't hear, honestly. But
it was an old man complaining about stuff. You know, that's what we do. We get old and we start talking about the setup. And it was like, guys, you were waiting for Donald Trump to come into this particular setting, by the way, an all-black setting, and not complain about something or whine about how he's being treated. It took him 30 seconds to get into character, maybe less, actually.
And every time he's asked a tough question, it's always a nasty question. Like that. That's not something that he just saves for black reporters or black female reporters or female. It's always a nasty. It's a nasty question when he's asked. He's asked something that he's got to give an uncomfortable answer to. It's always a nasty question.
Nasty. It's always nasty. because I don't want to.
So you were telling me that there were actually fans of Trump's let into that event. Now, I mean, why was that, or was that like a prerequisite for his doing this? Why? I mean,
I can imagine him asking because some of the people were like, like wearing Trump hats and stuff. It wasn't a lot. When I say there were some fans, it was like maybe a half dozen.
Mm-hmm.
So you hear clapping. If you hear clapping or you hear laughter, it's coming from them. It's not coming from the journalists.
That's what I thought.
That were in the room.
I was wondering that myself because when I was listening or watching the interview, I kept hearing like a smattering of cheers and
Clapping.
and clapping and.
But agreement.
The one thing that I wasn't curious about was the laughter because I have to think. I mean, how hard was it to be a professional journalist and withhold your laughter
or your anger?
Yeah,
and just say, yell from the crowd, man, shut up. Just shut up. This makes no sense. Why are you still complaining about the sound system or about how well I guess I can hear you. It's not that bad. I'll just try my best. Dude, you didn't have to say yes.
Yeah.
You could have said no. I wish you said no. That's the story. I would have written the story about how he was invited again for the sixth consecutive time and said, no, you've been invited multiple times. They do this for every presidential candidate, by the way. So this is not a freak thing. The problem is he's not your traditional candidate, and he doesn't need to be here. Just like Joe Biden didn't need to be given the commencement speech at Morehouse College. I'm still stuck on that. Yeah. I think we should put people in these spaces. Why do we keep on inviting people into our spaces?
Yeah.
And then say they didn't behave the way we would like. No.
Right. Speaking of just shut. No, you're good. Speaking of just shut up. That's what Ari Fleischer said on Twitter yesterday during the Trump press conference. Trump should stop the news conference now. 3 p.m. Eastern. It's been almost an hour. Don't turn this into a COVID 90-minute briefing. He's made his points. Time to get off the field. I mean, even those on the right are like, dude's got to shut up. Got to shut up. He's got to get off the stage. This isn't good. He keeps doing these things, though. And, I was talking about my more pessimistic friend, Daryl. And I said, man, listen, all I got to do is let Donald be Donald. And that alone will make the case. But, Lawrence O'Donnell went off on this riff last night on MSNBC about how the national media has not learned its lessons from 2016 by giving this guy any opportunity to sort of, I don't even know if, I think in 2016, all the airtime he was given actually benefited him. But I think the exact opposite effect would happen this cycle. I don't know. What's your theory on that?
That's me. I'm actually in that same boat. The NABJ gave Trump, not to go backwards, I'm just going to use this to kind of symbolize. NABJ gave a man a platform unnecessarily, despite being a presidential candidate. Mm-hmm. It was unnecessary. And then here we go again. The guy wants to hold a press conference in Mar-a-Lago. So basically at home.
Right.
It's like me holding one in my living room. And you come into that, and then I speak on what I want to speak about. And I demand terms. And we covered it nationally. Mm-hmm. I watched it on C-SPAN. Mm-hmm. So I didn't even do the networks because I don't do the networks. It's just hard for me to watch network TV. It's all slanted and whatnot. So I don't do it.
You're right.
And I wasn't there personally. I had the press. I could have credentialed for it, but we're not flying in Florida for that crap. And there's no way. It's not on the budget to waste that much money for that.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. It was like we're still covering his every move. We all should have ignored that. When he said, I'm having a press conference in Mar-a-Lago, it should have just been Fox News, maybe News Nation,
Newsmax, OAN.
Yeah. Newsmax, OAN.
Yeah.
And that's it. It shouldn't have been everybody. It was like, come on, man. What are we doing? Why are we still doing this?
I want to go back.
He says the thing about MLK and 63 on the National Mall, and you go, whoa, that's crazy. No kidding. I'm always crazy. Is he not always crazy?
He's consistently crazy, right? Like a sprayed roach. I want to go back to the NABJ because there was a lot of sway made on the right about, well, at least Donald Trump went and did this, and where's Kamala Harris? And, there's a rather rational and actually profound and heartbreaking reason for that. She was attending the funeral of former Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee in the Houston area, and obviously, she's going to give priority to that. She is, however, supposed to do something in September. Has that been set up yet? What is that going to be, or do we know?
It hasn't been verified. It hasn't been 100% locked in, but it will be. And from what I understand, it will be virtual. And again, the debate is on now for September 10th. So, I'm busy. I got a lot of stuff going on. So you guys want, She could have did virtual at NABJ, and allegedly they turned it down.
Uh-huh.
I wanted her in person, and she's just a busy woman right now. So this will probably be virtual, and we'll all watch and tune in, and there'll be a crazy number of people, and we'll all say, "Oh my God, this many people was on the call," and whatever, man. She's got a campaign for a big job. I don't expect her to break off and come down to Chicago for that. I thought virtual would have been just fine.
Yeah,
they should have accepted it. And when they went back to say, "Hey, you know what? Forget it. We'll take it," she's like, "No, I got to move on."
Right.
And I don't blame her for that.
Well, we'll see how that all plays out. As we will, the NFL preseason rolling out soon. Your Jets will be my Falcons will be hitting the field this weekend. I don't think either one of our starting quarterbacks are playing, however, although we've got Michael Penix Jr. to watch, so I'm kind of excited about that.
That's going to be cool for you guys. Yeah, I have no idea who the Jets backup quarterback is.
I was going to ask you who is, because you guys traded, what's his name?
Zach Wilson. Yeah. I prayed on that. I prayed for that. I prayed for that every night to get this guy away from me.
I don't know.
And he's gone. So I don't care who plays backup quarterback for the Jets. I will be a supporter.
I don't know why that guy couldn't pull it together. I think you or I could have gone out there and done as bad.
Easily.
Anyway.
Without the experience and the money. I would have taken half the money to play that bad. I think he showed some flair in college. I didn't see him at BYU. I don't watch BYU football.
Yeah.
But someone was like, "Oh, his kid's got talent." I'm like, "Okay, cool."
Last thing, my Braves are in Colorado. That's a really crappy team, although we played the Marlins to a 2-2 draw as well. Who do the Mets have this weekend?
St. Louis. Tough series. They're always tough. We go back a long ways with them.
I'm going to go out on a limb. Yeah, back when you were both in the NL East. I'm going to go on a limb here and say that by the end of the weekend, I think our spot in the standings will probably be flipped. But
no way. We're so hot right now. I'm not scared of anybody right now.
Okay.
The only reason why we're behind Philadelphia is because we gave everyone a freaking 2-week start. We didn't do anything at the beginning of the season.
Well, and the Phillies are giving somebody a chance to overtake them in the East. It just doesn't look like it's going to be the Braves right now. My God, we're sputtering.
Exactly.
Donnell Suggs, editor-in-chief at the Atlanta Voice. Thanks so much for your time today, man.
I love you, brother. Call me anytime.
Same here, buddy. Same here. Final segment of the show for the day and for the week. I want to thank Donnell Suggs, Atlanta Voice editor-in-chief. Again, it's always great to catch up with him. And he, by the way, just off the air invited me to lunch at Fellini's, so we're doing that soon. And I, too, want to tour the Atlanta Voice offices and check out some of the historic print there. So we'll have to do that very soon. Okay, so the Georgia Elections Board isn't done dog whistling to their MAGA base. The latest here is an effort by the Elections Board wanting counties to post signs outside their polling places, according to Caleb Graves with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, stating U.S. citizens only. I mean, this is kind of like Jim Crow era statue erecting. Anyway, board member Janice Johnson unveiled a sample sign at a meeting of the board. Take a listen to this.
Yes, Dr. Johnson, too.
This is Dr. Johnson, too. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The reason for the discussion of signage and polling locations and other areas where citizens vote is the concern that with the influx of so many non-citizens into the United States over the past several years, we now have 30 million non-citizens in the United States. Some of that includes lawful permanent residents, some non-immigrant visa holders, some asylees, some parolees, some illegal aliens. The number of illegal aliens varies from 5 to 11 million by reports in the media.
What's this one?
I would like to give you 12 reasons for a sign to be placed in every polling place, in every election office, in every voter check-in table. Did you know that about 99% of voters use a driver's license as a photo ID to vote? Did you know that non-citizens may obtain a driver's license and a social security number, and that any non-citizen that claims asylum can get a regular driver's license with no indication on the driver's license that they are a non-citizen? or if you're from Samoa or other Southeast Asia islands, you may obtain a driver's license with no indication that you're a non-citizen. Did you know that the driver's license real ID program does not mean that you are a U.S. citizen? It only means you have identity papers that say you're the person with that name. Did you know that a driver's license for a non-citizen is marked with an inconspicuous label, limited term?
What does this have to do with elections?
Did you know that poll workers are not educated or trained to look for the label, limited term? Did you know that screening through the SAVE, that is Systemic Alien Verification Entitlement Program system, is voluntary and only works if you are registered and participating in the government system. So checking for citizenship with SAVE is no guarantee that a person is a U.S. citizen.
No, but the computer system does.
Did you know that you can register to vote with only a utility bill or a bank statement, neither of which are photo ID? And you can get a voter ID card without photo identification.
But there's a system.
Did you know that when you register to vote, that you're given a voter registration number before your application for registration is verified and accepted or rejected?
But again, there's a Secretary of State's office.
Did you know that President Biden issued an executive order to provide voter registration applications to any person that interacts with a government agency, whether they are citizens or non-citizens? Did you know that citizens are the least informed about voting laws, the most susceptible to unknowingly registering to vote, and most easily duped into registering to vote or trying to vote absentee by mail? Did you know that you cannot ask a voter if they are a U.S. citizen in the polling place? Did you know that it's much more valuable to our entire electoral process to prevent non-citizens from registering to vote or voting than trying to find, investigate, and prosecute cases of non-citizen voting?
She's saying all this stuff like there's not a system in place to filter this stuff out. This is asinine dog whistling to the MAGA base,
which rarely get heard and almost never get prosecuted. Only the chief election official of the state who holds our voter rolls can make sure that only eligible U.S. citizens and eligible Georgia citizens are allowed to be on the voter rolls and allowed to vote. So understanding this, I see a constant number of articles in the media, on television, in the paper,
she sees it.
with concerns about possible non-citizen voting.
Possible.
This year.
Not probable.
In the upcoming election.
Yeah.
So I would like to recommend this board to send a letter to all election offices in the state with signage that they could put in their polling places or at their election offices, or certainly both, that would be just a visual to help non-citizens if they walked into the office, to understand that voting in our federal U.S. elections is not allowed for non-citizens.
I think this is extremely important. As I'm sitting here, I'm looking out, I see there's some people who are not in favor of encouraging our new members of the family, I guess you could say, that are not yet citizens, encouraging them to follow our laws. That's what this is all about. This is the purpose of this. I don't think any U.S. citizen should be upset with the plan, or at least the option, to encourage our election officials to abide by the law.
That's Janelle King, new board member. Remember her from Fox 5's The Georgia Gang, WAGA Television's Sunday talk program. Democratic board member Sarah Tyndall Ghazal weighed in on this non-issue by pointing out it's a non-issue.
This is a myth that citizens are voting in large numbers. I have seen incidents where it happens incidentally, but the disincentive to vote as a non-citizen is so enormous because people will, if you vote as a non-citizen, you risk immediate deportation. And
We say that for a lot of things and they still do it.
there is absolutely no evidence that this is happening in numbers that would make a difference. And I do not want my name associated with perpetuating disinformation that undermines confidence in our electoral process. Full stop.
First of all, it's not a myth that there's over 10 million new people in the United States right now that happen to be illegal. That's not a myth. We know that to be the case. Now, let me finish, please. Let's be respectful.
Let's.
We know that's the case.
Member King, please. Let's be respectful of other people's opinions, whether you agree with them or not. If you want to be heard and be respected, then you have to respect others.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So that we do know. And the fact that there are individuals who are here and have been here illegally doesn't, if anything, it strengthens our case that this is necessary. Again, we're not trying to prevent any U.S. citizen from voting. We're encouraging U.S. citizens to vote. We are trying to get ahead of the problem. There's nothing wrong with being proactive in a situation like we're in. I mean, it's no secret that there are people here. And to say that telling them that they'll be deported if they vote will somehow deter them from breaking the law, well, that clearly doesn't work. If we tell you if you commit murder, you're going to be deported, and they still commit murder. So I absolutely believe that there is an important step that we're making by getting ahead of a potential problem, not saying that it has happened, but we're getting ahead of it. We're just encouraging. It's just a sign. So I just think it's just a bit odd to me when I hear other U.S. citizens who are afraid of standing on the law and protecting our laws. That makes me a little concerned.
Well, she doesn't need to be so concerned because federal law requires that all voter registration forms already advise those signing up that they have to swear under penalty of perjury that they are U.S. citizens. And to show you how big of a non-issue this is, I'm going to go to an article the AP did a couple of years ago, Nicholas Riccardi writing. In 2016, North Carolina audited its election to make sure that no one voted improperly and found that 41 legal immigrants who had not yet become citizens cast ballot. 41 out of 4.8 million votes cast. Those illegal votes didn't make a difference in a single election in the state, even the smallest local race, according to the state's election board. Trump's Department of Justice later filed criminal charges against 19 immigrants for illegally voting in North Carolina. In 2022, Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, a Republican, conducted an audit in his state's voter roll, specifically looking for non-citizens. His office found that 1,634 had attempted to register, but election officials caught all the applications and none were actually registered to vote. But we got to put a sign up, just in case. I mean, this is just more dog whistling. Let me pivot real quick because I want to share some good news. Ross Williams reporting on this earlier this week at the Georgia Recorder. Georgia School Superintendent Richard Woods reversed his prior decision on taking African American Studies funding off the table, citing that as a mistake. Advanced placement African American Studies will be offered in Georgia high schools with state funding, Superintendent Richard Woods said Tuesday, but some members of both political parties are still wondering why there was ever any question. Yeah, see, it took the Attorney General Chris Carr to chime in and say that even the divisive concept law that he and his party advocated for doesn't actually speak to that curriculum. That's great news. Glad we all kept the heat on the state superintendent about that. All of today's show notes at ronshowatl.com. Have a great weekend.